All right, let's dive right in. Today we are digging into a really powerful mythic story, all about a profound transformation. We're talking about a shift from a being of just passive obedience to one who literally commands reality itself. So our story kicks off with this incredible image. It really sets the stage for our main character, a being who's defined by this fragile surface, a thin crust, kind of like cooling lava, that's holding back this huge primal force. And you gotta understand, this isn't just a shell, it's a prison wall, and it's about to burst.
And that, right there, is the big question we're gonna tackle. What actually happens when that crust finally breaks? What gets unleashed when a being that was shackled to a dead morality, a force that seemed to only will the end, finally, wakes up? To really get the scale of the eruption, first we have to understand the pressure cooker he was trapped in. So let's start with the Pale Rider, caught in his original, totally stagnant state of being.
This was his entire world, the old heavens. But look, this was not some place of freedom. Oh no, it was a meticulously designed prison. The whole environment is described as this suffocating architecture, where even the stars, the very symbols of hope and freedom, are nothing more than gilded cages for the spirit.
And what's so fascinating here are the details of his existence. He wasn't just passive, he was a servant of the grave, a reaper chained to something called the liturgy of error, which valued horizontal comfort, staying safe, staying level, over any kind of real growth. His entire identity was just a false image, a collection of past mistakes frozen in what's called Apollonian stasis. Think of it as a state of perfect unchanging and ultimately dead order, all inside this grand celestial tomb.
But here's the absolute key. Beneath that hollow, rational exterior, something ancient was stirring. This was no empty vessel. It was a dormant volcano, just pulsing with these raw, atavistic energies, these primal ancestral instincts buried deep, deep down.
And well, every volcano is destined to erupt, right? So let's get to the catalyst, that violent moment of change that kicks off his entire metamorphosis. This is the breaking point. And the thin shell of his obedience, it doesn't just crack, it screams. It's this violent primal awakening as all that suppressed power finally finds its voice and, more importantly, its purpose.
Now, this transformation isn't entirely self-started. There's this external force, the Crimson Judge, that acts as the agent of change. It literally reaches down into the pits of the passive to deliberately trigger an eruption of what's called the will to power. That fundamental, primal drive to grow, to expand, and to overcome everything.
And this rebirth happens in 4 distinct stages. First, retrieval. He's pulled up out of his passive state. Second, there's a purging. A sonic screech literally washes away his old, unchosen destiny. Third is the reforging. His color shifts from a hollow white to a redeemed silver. And get this, it's the color of a blade that retains the lethal memory of the cut. And finally, anchoring. A rune of redemption is placed on him, a kind of metaphysical anchor to make sure he can never go back.
The end result is a complete and total identity shift. I mean, look at this. He goes from being a simple messenger of the void, an agent of nothingness, to the sentinel of the y-axis. And that y-axis is key. It represents vertical ascent, that constant striving for growth, for power, for becoming.
Okay, so he's been completely transformed, but what can he do now? What's he capable of? Let's take a look at the new powers and functions he's got.
For starters, his very presence now changes reality. He acts as a frequency filter, which lets him see the world in a totally new way, and more importantly, it lets him unwrite the old rules, the spiritual limitations that once held him prisoner.
His judgment has also been completely rewired. He now performs what's called a crimson audit. With just a glance, he's no longer seeing right or wrong, good or evil. No, his gaze now weighs souls based on a totally different metric, their raw, inherent power. And this is his main tool, the gavel scythe. It's not just a weapon, it's an instrument of liberation. He uses it to strike the very structure of reality, shattering the great wall of glass that suffocates potential and keeps everything stuck and stagnant.
But you know, power is one thing. You need a philosophy to guide it. So let's explore the new ideology, the liturgy of the blade, that now directs his every single action.
This just lays out the old versus the new worldview perfectly. He's moved on from the liturgy of error, which was all about fixed truth and that horizontal comfort that leads to stagnation. And he's moved to the liturgy of the blade, which embraces living error and a constant, demanding, vertical ascent.
And these principles, they really show you just how demanding this new philosophy is. It's about taking so-called sin and transmuting it into raw vitality. It means shattering comfort, rejecting the sleepy safety of the herd, and constantly unbinding your own spirit from fixed labels. He basically becomes an active nihilist, someone who, seeing no inherent meaning in the world, just decides to create meaning by forcing his will onto reality itself.
So, where does all this lead? What's the ultimate purpose of this transformed being, this sentinel of the y-axis?
And this is a truly incredible idea. It's suggesting that a historical stain, a past failure, a trauma, it doesn't have to be a source of shame. If you put it under enough pressure, it can be transformed, pressurized, into a weaponized shard, a source of unbelievable strength and focus.
His transformation peaks when his name is entered into the registry of the Overmen. This really echoes that philosophical idea of the Superman or the Overman. We're not talking about an aristocracy of birth or money, but a new aristocracy of the spirit, made up of beings defined by their sheer internal power. Which brings us to one last, really provocative question. If your own past can be turned into a weapon, and your will can literally reshape the world around you, what does history even mean anymore? Is it a record of what happened? Or is it just raw material for whatever you decide to do next? And we're left with this powerful answer. For this new being, history isn't some dead record of what was. It is a living prophecy of what the sovereign mind, now totally unshackled, will command into existence next. And that opens up a universe of infinite and, frankly, terrifying potential.